Newcastle versus Chelsea, fourth versus fifth, the battle for a Champions League spot. Kweku, the Chelsea fan, earlier this season, you said that it would be a huge failure for Enzo Maresca to miss out on Champions League football. Do you still feel like that? And how do you see this game going?
Yeah, for sure. Like, look at the money that Chelsea have spent in comparison to some of the other teams competing for that place in the top four. Newcastle, the team that Chelsea take on this weekend, didn't bring anyone of note in the summer. They brought in Lloyd Kelly, who they subsequently sold in January. Lost Jakob Minter as well. Lost Elliot Anderson, and they are competing with Chelsea. I know that Newcastle got billions, but they haven't really been able to spend it. But again, I know that Chelsea at the beginning of the season, not many pundits had them in the top four, but based on how Chelsea started this season, I fully expect Chelsea to qualify for the Champions League. And like you said, if they don't, it'll be a failure. But Newcastle's not an easy place to go, right? And these teams both have ambitions of qualifying for the Champions League. And the beauty for Chelsea is that it's in our hands. We beat Liverpool last weekend. Not many people expected us to do that. We take on Newcastle at St James's Park. We've got Manchester United in the final game of the season. We've got Nottingham Forest. So there is no excuse now. It's time to lock in and time to turn up. And I think the beauty for Chelsea last week was Cole Palmer's performance. I think Gary Neville went a little bit over the top in terms of how good he was. But Cole Palmer getting on the score sheet again, kind of getting that confidence back, can only bode well for Chelsea. And I think he's going to go on a bit of a run between now and the end of the season. But it's do or die now for Chelsea. Got to go to Newcastle and get something. And if they do, I'll be very, very confident that Chelsea will finish in the top five and qualify for next season's Champions League.
I mean, you mentioned Cole Palmer there, and his form hasn't been particularly great over the last couple of months, probably coinciding a little bit with Nicholas Jackson's injury. Obviously, he is back now. How big is that for the next 3 games?
It's interesting with Nicholas Jackson because I compared these kind of strikers to like an ex that you think you can change. It's like, oh yeah, but when he starts scoring goals, then... But I've seen it with Timo Werner. We're seeing it with Darwin Núñez. We're seeing it with Nicholas Jackson. They're profligate in front of goals. They do so many good things in terms of runs in behind, in terms of helping out teammates with their movement. But in terms of what a striker is supposed to do, those type of players are not at the top level because you can't teach a striker how to finish. You either got it or you haven't. And so for me, Nicholas Jackson being back this season is great. He's in our best 11. Going forward, I would like to see Chelsea improve in that position.
I think Chelsea in general, though, have been kind of victims of their early season success. At the start of the season, if you'd have said Enzo Maresca is going to qualify for the Champions League, I think most people would have gone, that's about right. That's what they should be aiming for. That's what they should be looking to achieve. But because they started the campaign so well, and there was a point where not so much the Chelsea fans, and certainly not Enzo Maresca, but the wider world was saying, these guys are in the title race. These guys need to be taken seriously. It's led to Champions League qualification looking like the bare minimum now, when actually it should have been the main objective and the goal from the outset. I thought the result against Liverpool was really impressive and really, really important in the context of things. Because whatever you say about Liverpool, are they on holiday? Maybe. They've won the league already. To beat the champions is a confidence boost, and one that I think Chelsea really actually needed. Just a reminder of the fact that they can compete with the very best. But look, this is going to be a fascinating game for me because I look at that Newcastle team and I think it's strong, and I think there's a lot of players in there that can do Chelsea damage. But missing Joe Linton, which we think is going to be the case this weekend, that is huge for me because I would normally look at Newcastle and say, right, where do they have the edge? Where do they have the advantage? And normally for me, it's in the middle of the park. They've got that extra bit of physicality. You take Joe Linton out of the equation, they're not so dominant in there. And that will allow, I think, Chelsea's ball players, Fernandes, Lavia, Palmer, to get on the ball and make things happen.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And Lavia returning for Chelsea is absolutely huge. I feel like if he had stayed fit the whole season, we might be looking at a different outlook or maybe looking at a different season for Chelsea. Not necessarily compete for the title, but maybe more comfortably in the top 4 or 5 places in the league. And in midfield as well, I think we can draw our advantage. You think about, well, it depends on what Maresca does, right? It depends on if he goes with a Caicedo as a right back that inverts or he goes with Reece James. He loves Enzo Fernandez. This season, his output's been brilliant. But just that trio of Lavia, Caicedo and Enzo Fernandez, when they're all on the pitch together like they were at the beginning of the season, good things happen for Chelsea. And that's why I think we can draw our advantage. I'm not diminishing the talents of a Guimaraes or a Joe Willett, but like Harry touched on, missing Joe Linton is absolutely huge. He's the engine in that midfield, and Chelsea should take advantage of that. And like you mentioned, if you get Cole Palmer on the ball and get him ticking and get him being the metronome of the team, then good things are going to happen for Chelsea. And again, I say it, St James's Park is a difficult place to go, and it has been for Chelsea over the last few years. But I fully expect us to go there and get something.
Just to go back to that point, I think it was a few months ago when you said you were pretty scathing of Enzo Maresca, and you said he should be sacked if Chelsea don't get Champions League football. I've been quite impressed with what he's done, because I think it's a difficult place to go, especially with what's been going on off the field for the last couple of seasons. Chelsea bought a ridiculous amount of players, and I think the way that he condensed his squad was really good. And I do look at his team, and I do think that throughout the entire season, he's not been blessed with top quality centre-backs, and he's not been blessed with a top quality goalkeeper. And I do think coming fourth in those conditions, if he does manage to do that, and if he does manage to beat Newcastle, is a massive success. And I think him not doing that doesn't necessarily mean that he's failed the season. I think because of the expectations that we set on Chelsea, I mean, I've got to hold my hands up. I was saying like 2-3 months into the season, Chelsea might win the Premier League. But I think because of the expectations they've set, this now seems like a drop-off. But I do think, considering what he's come into and the whole rigmarole around Chelsea, the fact that you're even challenging and you're so close to the Champions League spot, with that defence, with a goalkeeper who's probably not at that top level, is a bit of a bonus for Maresca.
Yeah, but Harry can speak to it in terms of expectations. Expectations changed depending on the season. No one really, or I didn't expect Arsenal to be challenging in the latter stages of the Champions League, especially when Havertz went down with the injury and Gabriel Jesus went out with the injury and Gabriel went out of an injury. But expectations changed. We saw how Arsenal performed against Real Madrid, both home and away, and now they're out against PSG. That's viewed as a disappointment. With Chelsea, the way they started the season, the way that Chelsea were playing, and the way that Chelsea were challenging some of the top sides in the league, we should be in the top four comfortably based on that start to the season. I still think we're going to make it, but for Enzo Maresca, he has to understand, and what Chelsea fans also do understand, is that it's a results-dependent business. You win, you're a hero. You lose, you're a villain, and that's how football goes, right? And like I said, Arsenal, if Arteta wins that game against PSG, he's a genius. Now he doesn't, he's a bum. And that's just how football is. It might be harsh. It might be very narrow in terms of narrow-minded when it comes to the viewpoint of managers, but that's the life of a manager. You live and die by results. And so for Enzo Maresca, if he does qualify for the Champions League, great job. If he doesn't, unfortunately, he didn't perform. He didn't meet expectations.
That's such an important point, though, about the expectations changing, because they do. They absolutely do. And people that refuse to acknowledge that, I think their analysis is flawed. You know, you look at Chelsea and the way it's changed over the course of the season, and now qualifying for the Champions League feels like, in some people's eyes, they've saved their season. It's what they wanted from the beginning, but the expectation went up and it's gone back down to where it should be. Flip that to Newcastle, though, as well, because I don't think at the start of the season a lot of people even had them to finish in the Champions League places. And they've already won a cup and they're on course to finish in the top 5. This is as good a season as a Newcastle fan could have asked for at the start of the campaign. Delivering a trophy, ending that long wait for silverware, and also getting them back into the Champions League after a drop-off. And
I do think the job that Eddie Howe there is absolutely unbelievable that he's done there, because I know when the Saudis took over, there was all this talk about they were going to spend a huge amount of money, and that's where the success was coming from. But you look at the side, and you've got an aging Dan Burn, who's never been at the top level. You've got an aging Trippier. You've got Jacob Murphy and Harvey Barnes, who were both playing for relegation strugglers before they came in. Joe Willock not really doing a huge amount, not pulling up any trees. And of course you've got the players there like your Isaacs, your Jolintons, your Tonales, your Bruno Guimaraes. But that's like 4 players. The rest of the team you would probably look at and you'd say they're filler players, they're mid-table players. But Eddie Howe's got them playing unbelievable football. Do you think he's like a little bit underrated, maybe because he's English?
I don't think we can diminish the quality of their top level players, though, because I think most of the best sides in the Premier League have 4 or 5 top players, and the rest are ancillary pieces that fit in. If you look at Liverpool, they've got Trent, they've got Alisson, they've got Van Dijk, and they've got Mo Salah, who are top players. The rest, there's no guarantee that if they're playing in a different system at a different club under a different manager, they're guaranteed bankers to be successes in the Premier League. And you look at Newcastle, Isak's one of the best strikers, if not the best striker in the league. Tonali's been one of the best centre midfielders. Guimaraes is absolutely quality as well. And I know that it's not fashionable, but Harvey Barnes is a very, very good player, and so is Anthony Gordon. So I look at this Newcastle team, and yes, Eddie Howe deserves a lot of credit for the job that he's done, especially bringing players along that maybe weren't favoured elsewhere. Look like a Lewis Hall. I know he's injured at the moment, but Lewis Hall, who Chelsea were willing to let go for around 30 million. Livramento, who had his injury issues, but now is one of the best fullbacks in the league. And Dan Burn, who is obviously a cult hero at the football club, who's never played at the highest level. He deserves credit for that, but I don't think we can discount how good some of Newcastle's best players are.
I agree with that, but where I will give Eddie Howe a lot of credit is that this project sort of begun under the Saudi ownership, and everybody, as you said, felt that they were going to go and break the bank and bring in all these top players. And I remember at that time people having the discussion and the conversation of, okay, Eddie Howe's done great, picked them up from a position where they were relegation threatened and took them to a place where they made the Champions League. But can they go that next level with him? What he's done is been able to rally them and go again. Now, they did miss out on the Champions League afterwards. They couldn't follow that up. That season was a disaster because of the injuries they had and all the other factors. But to get that group, having not invested again in the group, to go again and to build again and get them back to that level, I think that's where he deserves the most credit, because he's reinvented them. Not, reinvented the wheel, but he's changed things here and there. He's tweaked it. He's been sort of forward thinking in terms of his coaching, and he's made sure that Newcastle have been able to bridge that gap again without the investment that we've all been expecting.
I mean, I kind of agree with you both, but I do think the mark of a good manager is understanding that you're only as good as your weakest link. And I think if anyone told you 2-3 years ago Jacob Murphy would be regularly scoring for a Champions League side in Newcastle, you wouldn't have believed them. And I think all of that comes down from the manager. I think in the same way that we praise Nuno Espirito Santo for gathering together his merry band of misfits and challenging the elite, that's exactly what Eddie Howe's done, and I don't think he's got probably the credit that he deserves. But it is a huge game, probably will decide one way or another who will be in the Champions League towards the end of the season. Kweku, I'll start with you. What are your predictions?
Like I said, Chelsea will leave St James's Park with something. I'm going for a 2-2 draw on this.
I actually had 2 all written down, but I'll change it. I fancy Chelsea to win it. I'm going to go 3-2 to Chelsea.
I think Newcastle are going to win. I think they're a bit inconsistent, but I just think when you've got Isak there scoring goals like he does, and it is at St James's Park, it's a huge game. I think 2-1 to Newcastle. Let us know in the comments below what you think the score will be.